In today's video, we're going to dive into Adobe XD to create this awesome cryptocurrency dashboard design. So let's go ahead and get started with today's Adobe XD tutorial. To get started designing our dashboard for today, I'm using a 1920 by 1240 artboard, so just a little bit more vertical height than usual, and I'm using the navigation from our last design, which is this crypto landing page. So we're making a dashboard for crypto, so I'm just going to reuse this. It's 30 point for the logo, Proxima Nova bold, and on these links, it's 18 point medium. I'll link this on the screen if you'd like to follow along with this tutorial, just to grab the navigation, but that's gonna be the starting point for this video. So what I'm gonna do is, since a dashboard is usually on a nice grid system, I'm gonna be using guides. So I'm gonna drag out a guide on the left, 40 points from the left side of the artboard, and on the right as well, just to get us started. And I'm going to go ahead and bump this logo over to that guide. And I'm going to drag down a guide from the top that is 40 points as well. And I'm going to snap that logo up to the top there. And then I'm going to drag a guide down to the bottom of our logo, just so we have that navigation now housed in between those two guides. For the links, we're going to be in the dashboard, so we'll already be logged in or registered. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then I'll grab a circle for our profile icon, which let's set that to 48 points by 48. And that will be touching this right-hand guide. So 40 points from the right side of the artboard. Next to that, I'm going to create a square for an icon later on for a notification bell. And I'll just put that 26 points to the left of that. And then we can grab the rest of our navigation and I'll just drag that over. And we have 50 points in between each of these navigation links. I'll just put 50 here as well. So I'm going to grab all of that and then make sure I center align that together. And I just want to take a quick moment real quick before we continue on to mention the sponsor of today's video, Milanote. Milanote is a long-term sponsor here on the channel, and I pretty much use Milanote every day to map out and plan all of my creative projects. As a full stack designer, Milanote is a crucial part of my workflow as I utilize it as a project hub. From adding simple notes and to-do lists to creating full detailed brainstorming boards and mood boards. And not to mention that Milanote is collaborative, so I review with my clients inside of Milanote when we're going over the different design iterations for a project. So if you're looking for a tool to map out and plan your creative ideas and projects, check out the link at the top of the description and sign up for Milanote. And now back to our wireframing. I'll drag a guide down from the top and put that 40 points below our last guide at the bottom of the navigation. And we'll start to create our dashboard cards. So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool and just drag out a rectangle. And I'll put this 469 points in height. And then we can drag another guide down to the bottom of that. And then 40 points below that one, we'll place another one. And I'll fill this rectangle slightly gray so we can see it a little better. And I'm going to hold Option or Alt and click and drag to create a duplicate of that. So we have 40 points in between each of these. And this bottom card is going to have a graph in it, so we'll make it decently large. And I want it to be 40 points from the bottom, so I'm just going to drag this all the way down until it's 40 points. And then I'll just scale that back up to that guide. So the height on the second card is 574. And we'll just go ahead and drag out another guide and place that at the bottom of that rectangle. So down here at the bottom, like I said, we're going to have a graph. At the top, I want 3 separate card sections, so we need to divide this rectangle up. I'll do so by dragging out a guide, and we'll place that around 729 points from this left side guide. And then I'll just drag this over and scale it to that size. And then we can drag another one over 40 points from the last one. So we have an even 40 point gap in between all of our different sections. Just going to hold Option or Alt and drag this over. And we'll scale this into about 601 points. Looks good. And we'll drag over another guide and then do another 40 point gap. Finally duplicating that one more time. And then we have 3 sections at the top for our dashboard. So for this section here on the right top corner, I want to divide this into 3 sections. And the way I do this is a little weird. So what I like to do is just copy and paste this rectangle, and I'll fill this darker so you can see it. And I'm going to put it 40 points in height. And I'm going to drag this to the space above this card. And I'm going to hold Option or Alt and duplicate it one more time and drag it in between these two cards as well. And the reason I'm doing this is we can't just divide this rectangle by 3 because we have 40 point spacing in between each of those, so it's a little tricky. So a cool trick to do this is by placing this rectangle here and here. I can hold Option and drag out 2 more copies. And if I select all of them holding Shift, I can go up here and evenly divide those. And it creates 3 rectangle sections evenly divided in the space with 40 points in between them. So now I can just grab our original rectangle and scale each one of these to fill in that gap. And then delete the darker rectangles. Once we have that, I can go ahead and drag the rest of the guides out. So I'm going to make sure each one of these has a guide on the top and the bottom of it, just to help us align things a little later. So we have this so far, and now we can start actually laying out these different sections for our dashboard. So we're going to start in the top left-hand corner. So what I'm going to do is hold Option or Alt and drag out a duplicate of my logo, since it's 30 points and bold, which is what I'm going to be using here. And what I'm going to do is put this 40 points from the top and the left-hand side. So again, we're following that 40 point system. So you can even drag in guides if you'd like, which is what I'm going to do now. And I'm going to do that to kind of create the padding for this first card. I'll drag that out on the right side and on the bottom as well. And so all of our content will be inside of these new guides. And then I'm also going to drag out one more, and I'm going to place this on the baseline of this new text. So we'll just stick that right on the bottom of the text there. And I'll change this to say wallet. And let's go ahead and hold Option or Alt on that and create the next card's title as well. Again, here I'm going to drag out guides and put them 40 points from the edge of the card. And then we can just align this. And for this one, we'll say transactions. For these 3 sections over here, I'll go ahead and drag out the left and right side guides. And then while we're at it, we'll go ahead and do the guides for the bottom section as well. And we'll give the bottom section its label of growth. And then we also need to drag out a guide for the baseline of this one as well. And with these cards over here, they're going to have smaller labels. They're going to be a little bit different than these other 3. So we'll just leave those blank for now. So back to this first card. For our wallet, I want to give a good summary. So since it's a crypto wallet, I want to show 3 different cryptocurrencies as well as our account balance on the right. So let's grab a ellipse, and I'm going to hold Shift Y, drag that out to make it a perfect circle. I'll set that to 48 by 48, and we can go ahead and remove the border. And for now, I'll fill it to black. And next to that, we're going to have some text that's a little bit smaller. So we'll set it to 26, should be a good size. And I'll place this 12 points from the right side of that circle. And I'm going to make sure it's vertically centered with it. For now, I'm just going to say Bitcoin. Below that, 18 points. And bump that down from bold to medium. And I'll also set this to a gray of 999999. And we'll just, in all caps, say BTC. And I'm just going to touch that to the bottom of our text there. And while we're at it, let's create a duplicate of that. And I'll set it to black. I'm going to line it to the right. And then I'm going to say the percentage. So if the coin is up or down for the day, so we'll say like 3.83%. And since we have this guide here, I'm just going to move all of this up so that Bitcoin is sitting on that baseline so that we can align this percentage on the baseline with that as well, just so that looks good. And then I'm also going to bump this down 4 points from the heading just to give it a little bit more space. And then we can grab all of this holding Shift and Command G to group it together. And then we'll put this 40 points below our wallet text. And then we can just hit repeat grid on that and drag down. And we'll put 40 points in between them. And I'll do 3 copies of that. Then Command Shift G to ungroup the repeat grid. So now we have 3 groups of those. So on the right, we need our account balance. And that's going to be 18 medium. And we're going to align that on the baseline. And then put that on the right-hand guide. So it will be 40 points from the edge of the card. Below that, I'm going to have some bigger text. So I'll put it at bold, 36 points. And I'm going to just go ahead and align that to the right. And we're going to touch that to the bottom of the account balance text and just put in a random number. And then I'm also going to set the account balance to gray as well. So far we have that. If you want to toggle off the guides, you can hit Command semicolon just to turn those off so we can see what we have. So that looks pretty good. We have this card that I designed in the last video. So I'm going to grab that and hold Option or Alt and create a duplicate. And I'm actually going to change this completely. So I'm going to change this to a black card. So we'll just go to solid color, black, make that 100% opacity. Remove the drop shadow and the background blur. So we have this nice card, and I'm going to rotate it. And we're going to put that 40 points below our account balance number. I'm going to turn my guides back on with Command semicolon. We'll align that on that 40 point from the right guideline there. And I'm just going to hold Shift and kind of scale this to a smaller size. So that section's looking pretty good. I'm just going to grab the background, Command C, Command V to copy and paste it. With that selected, hold Shift and grab the card. Then you can hit Command Shift M, or you can go up to Object, Mask with Shape. So now that is inside of our section. And I'll just send that to the back with Command Shift left square bracket key, which is going to put it all the way on the bottom. And then I'm just going to hit Command right square bracket key. I'm just going to keep hitting that until it gets above our background, so we can still edit all of these groups if we need to, and our mask is not covering them. But for now, I think that's going to do it for our wireframe of that section. So next, let's move on to transactions. This one's going to be pretty simple. So I'll turn my guides back on. I'm going to grab account balance and hold Option and drag over a duplicate. And on the far right side, I'll say amounts, hold Option, create a duplicate. 40 points from that, we'll say type. And 40 points from that, we'll say date. So we'll have the name of the transaction on the left, and then we'll fill in these fields below it. And actually, we've got plenty of space here, so let's change that from 40 to 80 so we got a bit more room. So I'm just going to select those, and I'm holding Shift and hitting my left arrow key to move in increments of 10. So we have now 80 in between those. And our first entry, I'm going to line that to the left, and I'll set the fill color to black. We'll put 40 points below our transaction heading. And I'll just say Apple Store or something. Create a duplicate. I'm going to align it to the right and make sure that it is aligned on the right side of date there. And then we'll just put a random number. Create another duplicate of that. Align that on the right side of type. We'll say that was a purchase, and then we'll create another duplicate. And then here we'll put the price of that purchase. So $3,500. And we'll leave this one at medium, but we'll grab the rest of these. So the type, date, and then the name, and we'll change that to regular, just so the amount stands out a little bit more. And then for these, I'm going to drag a line underneath them. So I'll turn my guides back on, and holding Shift, I'll drag that from this guide over here. So we have just about 40 points on each side, and I'll place this 18 points below that first heading. And with that selected, we can grab all of our text fields and that underline, and then hit repeat grid. We can drag down several of these and make sure the spacing in between matches what we put in between the underline and our text. And we'll just drag down until we fill up this section, then Command Shift G to ungroup that. So if I select this text, we should have 18 points above it and below it, which we do. And on that last one, let's just go ahead and delete that underline just because it's unnecessary. And that looks a little better. Let's move on to these three cards here on the right. So these three cards are going to show a cryptocurrency, and we'll have them in categories of trending, on the rise, stuff like that. So the featured cards here. So I'm just going to grab the type tool, and again, I'm just going to use Bitcoin as the template text for now. We'll set this to 24 points. and then we'll set it to bold. And actually, let me check what we're using over here. So we have this set to 26. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these other two groups, and I'm actually going to change this to 24. I believe 26 is a little big. So I'll just scale that down, and I'm going to make sure that it's aligned on the baseline still. Make sure our spacing's good. Okay. And then I'll just repeat grid that once more. So we have 3 of those, and then ungroup that. Okay, so back over here, again, we're going to put Bitcoin in, and this time I'm going to create a duplicate of that and put the shorthand for that in. And let's go ahead and align these to the left, and then we'll set this one to a regular weight and our gray color that we're using, and put that 12 points from our Bitcoin text. I'm going to slide those over, and we're going to create the icon for the Bitcoin logo, and we'll make this one a little bit smaller. We don't have a lot of room in this card, so we'll set it to 36 instead of 48. So we'll drag those over, and then with all those selected, vertically align them. Next, let's create a heading for this, and we'll call it trending in all caps. Scale that down to 18. And I believe we're using medium weight, so we'll set it to medium weight to be nice and consistent. And I'm going to place that 40 points from the left-hand side, so on that guide there. And this section is going to be different. We're going to have 20 padding on the top, and this one is going to be 30 from the bottom. And then let's also create a duplicate of that trending text, and we'll right align this, and we'll put our percentage in. So this is telling whether it's up or down today, and I'll make sure that's vertically centered with the rest of those. And then let's do what we did with our other icons, remove that and just fill them to black for now. And we'll also do that to the profile icon as well. And so now we can grab everything in that card and just hold Option or Alt and drag a duplicate of that down and just realign that 20 from the top and 30 from the bottom. So we'll copy that one more time and align it. And then we can change this to featured, and we'll call this one on the rise. So now I have 3 featured different cryptocurrencies there. For our final section, our graph section, I'm going to turn back on our guides. And then I'm going to duplicate this growth text, and I'm going to fill this with our current balance. And we'll scale that down to 24 points in size and leave it at bold. We'll put that 40 points to the right of growth. And then I'm just going to go up here and grab this text, copy and paste it and drag it down. And we'll put that on the baseline as well. So we're going to show this is the growth section, this is the account balance, and what the percentage is of change today, whether it's positive or negative. And for now, we'll put that percentage 20 points, or actually we'll go 18 from the right side of our text. Then I'm going to create another text. This one's 18 medium, and we'll say today for the filter that we're using. And then above that, I'm going to create a text that is 14 points. So it's really small, and we'll put a random date in for that day. So we'll say it's May 12th. We'll fill that to gray and put it 4 points above today. And then we're going to need an icon. I'm going to load up Nucleo and grab an arrow icon from Box Icons. Just drag one in. And for now, I'll set it to black. And then I'm going to scale this down in size. So we'll set the width to like 12, maybe even 8. And I'm going to center that vertically with today and put it 40 points from the right side of our card. And we'll see how much spacing we have here. Zoom out a little bit. Maybe move those over. So it's something like that. So the user can select this drop down and change whether they want to see the week view, today, the month, whatever they'd like to view. Next, we need to create our graph down here at the bottom. Graph, we're going to need some extra spacing on the left and bottom for the different values on the X and Y axis. So I'm going to drag down some extra space. So we'll go 60 from the baseline of this text. And then on the left-hand side, we'll put 80 spacing from this padding there. So that's 40 spacing there and then another 80 here. And we'll do 60 additional on the bottom to match the top. So there's a 40 spacing there and then another 60. And then on the right side, we don't really need anything on that edge. So we'll just leave the 40 spacing there. So if I fill this in with a rectangle just to show, that is the place in which our line graph is going to go. We'll have our values on the bottom and then our values on the left-hand side. I'll just delete that. It'll probably be easier to see if I go ahead and grab the wireframe itself and we'll fill it to a lighter gray, DED FE5 for the color code on that. And then I can set the growth card to white so we can see a little bit better. So I'm just going to drag out a line from the top corner to the right-hand side. And then I'll hit repeat grid on that and drag down. I'm going to put 40 spacing for our horizontal lines. And I'll drag that all the way down. And then Command Shift G to ungroup that. And what I want to do is with this group selected, I want to drag that bottom line to our bottom guide there. So we can have some space at the top. That doesn't really matter, but we want to make sure that bottom line there is on that bottom guide. Next, I'm going to grab the line tool once more and drag a line down on the left-hand side. We'll repeat grid on that one as well. And for our spacing on our vertical lines, I'm going to go all the way to 80. And we'll just drag that all the way over here to the end. And then Command Shift G to ungroup that. So if I turn my guides off, you can see what we have there. I don't want this hard line on the left, so I'll delete that one. And I don't want one on the bottom either. So we have something that looks like this. So I'm going to grab all of those lines just by clicking and dragging, holding Shift and unselecting the background, just so we have those lines selected. And I'm going to Command G to group those together. We can then make those a little lighter, so we'll fill them to DED FE5, right click, apply as border. So you can just barely see those there in the background. Let's go ahead and create some text for the bottom values. So I'll just grab this as a duplicate. So we'll be at 18 points medium weight. Make sure that's aligned to the left. And I'm actually going to go up here and align this to this first line. And we'll say 4 AM. And then I'm going to skip a line and then go to the next one. Align that there. And so every other line, we're going to have one of these. You could repeat grid on this as well. I'm just going to do it manually. And then we'll change the text. I'll go in 2-hour increments. So this line right here is 4 o'clock. This will be 5, 6, and so on. And once we have all those, I'll just hold Shift and click on all of them. I'm going to turn my guides back on with Command semicolon, and we'll drag those down. Also, while we have those selected, let's set them to gray, and then we'll copy one of them and place it over here on the left. So with this, we're going to align it vertically to this line, and I'll actually go up every line and have one of these. Again, you can repeat grid on this, but since we have so few, I'm just going to quickly drag them into place. And we'll do that all the way to the very top line, selecting all of them. I'm going to drag them over to our left-hand guide. So there's 40 spacing from the edge of this section. And then I'll change the text on this. So I'm going to start at -2% and then go up by 1% each time. And I'm actually going to stop at 4%, and I'm just going to delete this one. And I'm actually going to go in that group and delete that top line. So now we have our graph set up. We can actually start putting our data on the graph. And I'm going to zoom in and hit P for the pen tool. And I'm going to go on the very start, and I'll start at around -1%. And I'm just going to make a point. And then I'm going to go and make a dot on every line, so every hour. And that will be a good start to this. And so it's not really looking very realistic at the moment, but that's a good start. And with that selected, I'm going to go ahead and set that to 4 for the size, just to make it a little bit bigger. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and divide that up. So I'll double click on that. So now I can edit each one of these points. And if I just hover over the line, you'll see I can add a new anchor point. So I'll just do that. And in between each one of these dots, I'm going to add a new anchor point. And then I'm just going to change the position on that. And then I'll just repeat that from left to right. And then I'll do that once more to add even more variation to the line. So now our line is looking a little bit more realistic. One final thing I'm going to do is show even more variation in the line just by going in, and I'm going to double click on the line again. And I'm going to do this on every point except the starting point and the final point. So I'm just going to double click on them to convert them to handles. And then I'm going to hold Shift and lock the handles in a perfect horizontal axis. So I'll show you that again. I'll double click on this one, grab my handles and make it horizontal. And I'm going to go through and do that for all the points on this line. And that just shows a little bit more change over time on the graph. The only thing you want to avoid doing this is making the handles too big, because if you do, you can see here, we're actually going backwards in time, which doesn't make any sense. Same thing here, we're going forward and then backwards. So just make sure that your line is constantly going forward. Then I just went through one final time and tweaked everything and make sure it looked just right the way I wanted it. And then I had completed the line for the graph. And now that we're done with the line, let's go ahead and grab those other card backgrounds. Just holding Shift, and we'll set those to default white. I'm also going to grab these underlines up here. So each one of these are grouped together. So I'll select them all holding Shift, Command Shift G to ungroup those. And I'll just click and drag to grab all those lines, and we'll set those to this background color we're using for the entire artboard, which is DED FE5. Right click, apply as border, just making those nice and subtle. And then finally, I'm going to grab another arrow from box icons. I'll give that a fill of black. I'm going to rotate it so it's vertical. I'm going to double click to edit this, and I'm going to customize this. I'm just going to drag those down, make it a little bit more vertical of an arrow. And then we can take this and put it next to our percentage value. And I'm just going to hold Shift to scale it down. And I'm going to try to get it around the same thickness as that one there, just so it doesn't stand out too bad. And I'm actually going to make it the same height. We'll drag that down in size a little bit more, around there. We'll just drag that over and see how that looks. That looks pretty good. And so I'm just going to go in, and for now, I'll put them at gray. And I'll just put these 8 points to the left of each one of these percentages throughout. So I'll do that first here on these 3 sections up top. And then let's flip this one upside down with this icon there. And then we'll drag up the next one. And I'm going to duplicate that holding Option. And we'll drag one over here. And then again, 8 spacing. So this one is 18 from the right of our amounts, and then our text there is 8 points from that arrow. Need a few more up here. And since I have these in their position, I'm just going to ungroup those as well with Command Shift G, so I can line that a little easier. And then we'll flip that one upside down. And finally, let's drag in our bell icon. I'm just going to use one from box icons again. I'll grab this outline one, drag that in. Give that a fill of black, and we'll just center that inside of our placeholder. And then in our layers panel, I'm just going to hide that original square just in case we need it later. And then in a lot of wireframes, I like to put a dot over this just to show what it's going to look like when there is an indicator. So we'll bump that up to 2 in size on the border, and then fill the border the same color as the background. And then for now, we'll fill it to black. And we'll just put that there. Let's put the border on the outside. That looks pretty good. And with that, I think we have finished the wireframe. So I'll select that, Command D to duplicate it, just so we have that wireframe if we ever need it. And then we'll just change this to dashboard design. All right, to finish it off, the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and change that bell that we just made and set the fill on that dot to blue. I'm going to drag in a profile icon. I'll just use my new logo. Just drag that in. And I'm going to drag in some different cryptocurrency icons into these 6 circles. And now I'll go through and update all the different text and create some variation. So for the cryptocurrencies, the transactions, and all of the percentage values. All right, so you can see I went ahead and changed all of the different currencies over, changed all the percentage values and the arrows accordingly, and as well as some of the transactions, just to make this look a little bit more realistic. One thing I am noticing is that the gray we're using for the text here isn't the greatest color. So I'm going to go ahead and in my assets, I'm going to edit that color, and let's change that and add a little bit of a blue in there, just to make that look a little better. So the new color code on that is 94989A. And then we're going to go through and set the positive values to green and the negative values to red. The color code is 58C388 for the green, and the red color I'll be using is DA4D48. So I'll just go ahead and set those to those colors. And let's finish off our graph. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the group for our grid lines, and I'm going to hit Command-Shift-G to ungroup it. And so now I have every line in that previous grouping now selected. I'm just going to right-click, Outline Stroke, which is going to convert them from strokes to fills. And then I'm going to create them into one shape by using this icon here for Add. And so now they are one shape. And what I'm going to do is go into the fill, and I'm going to change this to a linear gradient, and I'll just make sure they're the same color. And then I'm going to add a swatch in the center that's the same color. But on the top swatch and the bottom swatch, I'm going to drag the opacity to 0. So if I zoom in, you can just see very slightly there, it's going to fade out at the top as it gets to the 0% opacity swatch. And the same thing down at the bottom. So now that's looking good. So I'm going to select our line now, and I'm going to apply our blue color as the border, which is 0041E7. So that's going to pop out a little bit more. Then I'm going to select that line, Command C, Command V to create a duplicate of it. I'm going to turn my guides back on. I'm going to double click to edit the line, and with the pen tool, I'm going to select the start of our line. Then I'm going to go over to the end and connect it to the endpoint. So now that we have a shape, we can fill it and then remove the border. And I'm going to fill this just to a gray color for now so we can see it. And I'm going to hit Command left square bracket key until that is behind our original line, but still in front of our grid lines there. And with that in that order, I'm going to go to the fill. I'm going to set it to blue, and we'll go and change that to a linear gradient. And I want them to both be that same blue color. So I'll just paste in the color code. And for the bottom swatch there, I'll drag that down to 0. For the top swatch, I'll drag that just slightly lighter down to about 60%. So it just makes more of a subtle effect. Then at the end of our graph, I'm going to turn my guides on once more and drag out a line from where our line ends all the way down to the bottom, just above our text there. So this is going to indicate what numbers we're going to be viewing. So I'll set this to a size of 2. So if the user were to click on a different spot of the graph, this line would move over. A little pop-up would pop up and show the value for where this intersects our line. So this line theoretically will move in the final design, but for now we're going to put it at the end. We'll change it to a dash. So we'll set it to 4 dash with a 4 gap. And then I'm also going to set that to our blue color. So apply that as the border. And then here at where these intersect, let's create a circle. We'll do a 12-point circle with a size of 2 on the border. We'll set the border on the outside and we'll set that to white for the border color. And we'll fill that to blue for the fill color. A few quick final touches to finish this off. One, I want to create this color for our grid lines a little bit darker. So I'm going to go into the middle swatch, paste a new color code in of BE, 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 and drag the fill down to 64% on that, just to make that slightly more visible. Then in the top on our profile icon, I want to add a 2-point border of white, and I'm going to add that on the inside, just so that makes that pop a little bit more. We need to add a new navigation link. So I'm just going to ungroup and drag out a copy, and we'll just call this dashboard. And we'll just grab these and just drag the opacity down on them a little bit to around 46, 50%, just so we can see that we're on the dashboard page. And finally, let's grab the background on each one of these different sections and add a border radius of about 20 on there to give them some nice rounded edges. If you'd also like to, you can add a drop shadow to each one of these white cards just to add a little bit more shadow to them, just to separate them a little bit more from the background gray. But for now, I'm going to call this done. So we'll select this design, hit live preview, and take a look at what we have. That's going to do it for today's tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this design for this crypto dashboard. Make sure you give it a like if you did. Special thanks to Milanote for sponsoring today's video and making it all possible. If you'd like to check out their product for planning your next creative project, check out the link at the top of the description. Don't forget to subscribe, check out these videos for more design and Adobe XD related content. And as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.